Life has a way of exposing people's true nature when money enters the equation. I'm Emma, and this is the story of how my stepsister Sarah's greed nearly tore my family apart, or so she thought. When my father remarried, I was 12. My mother had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier, and though I still ached for her, I tried my best to welcome Sarah and her mother, Linda, into our lives. Sarah, 2 years older than me, never shared that sentiment. In front of our parents, she was sweet and charming, but in private, she made her intentions clear. "This is my house now," she'd whisper when no one was around, "and your dad, he's going to love me more than you." I tried to tell my father, but Linda always brushed it off. "Girls will be girls," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "Sarah's just adjusting." Not wanting to jeopardize his new marriage, my father encouraged me to try harder with my stepsister. So, I focused on my studies instead. I worked hard, graduated from business school, and built a career in financial consulting, something that made my father proud. Sarah, on the other hand, bounced from job to job, crisis to crisis, always finding ways to extract money from our parents. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. My father was diagnosed with leukemia. As his condition worsened, I adjusted my life to be there for him, working remotely to spend more time by his side. Sarah, suddenly interested in his affairs, began visiting more often. She would shoo me away from his hospital room, insisting they needed privacy. Linda encouraged it, saying Sarah was finally bonding with her stepfather. I had no idea she was carefully orchestrating my downfall. One evening, after another exhausting day at the hospital, I came home to find my laptop missing. I searched everywhere, but it was gone. When I asked Sarah, she only shrugged. 2 days later, my father summoned me to his hospital room. His face was pale, his expression filled with disappointment. Linda stood beside him, arms crossed. Sarah clutched his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Emma," my father said weakly, "Sarah showed me the evidence. How could you?" I frowned. "What evidence?" Sarah pulled out my missing laptop and turned the screen toward me. Bank statements appeared, documents showing large transfers from my father's accounts to an offshore account in my name. My stomach dropped. These were fabricated, but they looked real. "I found this when I borrowed her laptop," Sarah said, her voice trembling with fake hurt. "I didn't want to believe it, but I had to tell you." "Dad. That's a lie," I gasped. "Those documents are fake. Sarah stole my laptop. She must have done this." Linda stepped forward, eyes burning with fury. "How dare you accuse my daughter? She exposed your theft, and this is how you repay her." I turned to my father, desperate. "Dad, please, you know me, I would never do this to you." But his face had hardened. Years of Sarah's subtle manipulations had done their work. In his weakened state, he was ready to believe the worst. "I've called my lawyer," he said quietly. "I'm changing my will. I can't trust you with my estate, Emma, not after this." The room spun. My entire world, everything I had worked for, was crumbling. I tried to explain, to plead my case, but Sarah and Linda had woven such a perfect lie that my protests only seemed to confirm my guilt. "Get out," Linda spat. "You're no longer welcome here." I looked at my father one last time, searching his face for doubt, for anything that told me he still believed in me, but he turned away. I had lost. As I stepped into the hallway, Sarah followed. The second we were alone, her crocodile tears vanished. "You should see your face," she whispered, smirking. "Did you really think Dad would pick you over me? I've been planning this for months. Every document, every detail, perfect, wasn't it?" I clenched my fists. "Why?" Her eyes darkened. "Because you existed, because I was always second best, but not anymore. I win, little sister." I left the hospital with nothing but my purse and car keys. Hours later, my father's lawyer called to confirm the worst. My father had rewritten his will, leaving his entire estate, $4.8 million, including our family home and business shares, to Sarah. I was completely disinherited. I spent that night in a hotel, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every warning sign I had ignored. Then I remembered something. My father's old safety deposit box at the bank. He had given me access years ago, and inside was something Sarah didn't know about. I had proof. Sarah thought she had one. She was about to learn that I was my father's daughter, and he had taught me well. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 months passed. I stayed quiet, letting Sarah and Linda bask in their victory. Through mutual friends, I heard about their reckless spending. Sarah had already started gutting the family home, erasing every trace of me and my mother. But today, everything was about to change. I sat in the bank manager's office, watching through the glass as Sarah and Linda strutted in, draped in expensive new clothes, bought with my father's money. They had finally discovered the key to his safety deposit box, and they were here to claim whatever fortune they imagined was inside. What they didn't know was that I had already been here an hour earlier. Mr. Thompson, the bank manager who had known my father for 20 years, glanced at me as Sarah and Linda approached his desk. He gave them a curt nod. Mrs. Walker, Miss Walker, right this way. I remained out of sight as they followed him toward the vault, my heart pounding in quiet anticipation. On the security feed displayed on Mr. Thompson's desk, I watched as he guided them to the private viewing room, standard protocol for safety deposit access. Sarah's fingers trembled with barely concealed excitement as she slid the key into the lock. I could almost hear her thoughts, more hidden assets, secret wealth waiting to be claimed. But when she lifted the lid, her triumphant smile vanished. The box wasn't filled with bonds or cash. There was only a single USB drive and a sealed envelope in my father's handwriting. The inscription on the envelope was unmistakable. To be opened only in the presence of Emma Collins. Linda snatched the letter, her face flushing with anger. What is this? Where's the rest? Sarah's hands were already moving, ready to tear the envelope open. She never got the chance. I'd advise you to stop right there. Mr. Thompson's voice rang out. That letter explicitly states Miss Collins must be present. Sarah scowled. This is ridiculous. I'm the sole heir. Everything of our fathers belongs to me. That was my cue. I stepped into the room, and the instant their eyes landed on me, the blood drained from their faces. Hello, Sarah, Linda. I let my voice carry the weight of my satisfaction. Surprised to see me? Linda recovered first, her shock twisting into fury. How dare you come here? This is a private meeting. Actually, Mr. Thompson said smoothly, Miss Collins remains a registered holder of this safety deposit box. She has every right to be here. I walked over and picked up the letter, running my fingers over my father's handwriting. I could feel Sarah's eyes burning into me, her desperation barely concealed beneath her rapidly fraying composure. Shall we see what Dad had to say? I asked, breaking the seal. Sarah lunged, but Mr. Thompson stepped in her path, his voice cool and controlled. Miss Walker, I remind you that we are on camera. Any aggressive actions will be reported to the authorities. She froze, jaw clenched, hands balled into fists. I unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. My dearest Emma. If you are reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I know about Sarah's plan to frame you. I discovered her scheme weeks ago when I overheard her speaking on the phone about forging bank statements. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to confront her, but then I realized this was my chance to see the truth, to know, once and for all, the character of both my daughters. So, I played along. I let her think she had fooled me. The USB drive in this box contains security footage from my home office. It shows Sarah breaking in at night, accessing my computer, and creating the fraudulent documents. It also contains recorded phone calls, conversations between her and the hacker she hired to fabricate the bank statements. Emma, my brave girl, I am so sorry for doubting you, even for a moment. By the time you read this, I will have already signed a new will, the real one, with my attorney, Mr. Davidson. The will Sarah believes she benefits from is a fake, part of my own plan to reveal the truth. My entire estate, all $4.8 million, belongs to you, as it always should have. The will Sarah holds is worthless. Love, Dad. The silence that followed was suffocating. I lifted my gaze and met Sarah's wide, horrified eyes. Beside her, Linda clutched the edge of the table, her knuckles white. You really should have been more careful where you made your phone calls, Sarah, I said, my voice even. Did you honestly think Dad's office wasn't monitored? You're lying, Linda spat. This is a trick. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. The security footage played. On the screen, clear as day, Sarah was hunched over my father's desk, navigating through his banking software. Then came her voice, dripping with cruel satisfaction. Yes, I need the bank statements to look perfect. Emma has to lose everything. Sarah's face twisted in pure panic. She lunged for my phone, but Mr. Thompson was quicker, stepping between us once more. I've already sent copies to the police, I said calmly. They're very interested in cases of wire fraud and inheritance fraud. You can't prove anything, Sarah hissed, but there was no strength behind her words. Mr. Thompson adjusted his tie. Actually, the bank has already received confirmation from Mr. Davidson's office regarding the real will. As of this morning, all accounts under Mr. Walker's estate have been frozen pending investigation. Linda grabbed Sarah's arm. We need to leave, now. Oh, you'll be leaving, I said, stepping aside, but not in the way you think. Right on cue, 2 uniformed officers appeared in the doorway. Sarah Walker, Linda Walker, one of them said, we need you to come with us. Sarah let out a strangled sound, part rage, part desperation. This isn't over, she shrieked as the officers stepped forward. I smiled. Yes, Sarah, it is. The next few minutes were a blur of movement, handcuffs clicking, voices raised in protest, the sound of Sarah and Linda's fury echoing through the bank's marble halls. And then, finally, silence. I stood there, still holding my father's letter, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with something else, relief, closure. Mr. Thompson placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Your father was a wise man, Miss Collins, he said softly. He knew exactly how to bring the truth to light. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. Yes, he did. I looked down at the letter one last time, tracing the ink with my fingertips. And then I folded it carefully, tucked it into my bag, and walked out of the bank, into the life that was finally, rightfully mine. Sarah had been siphoning money from our father's accounts for months, quietly building her own secret fortune. She thought she was untouchable, that her deception was flawless. But in the courtroom, her carefully constructed world unraveled piece by piece. The evidence was damning: security footage, recorded phone calls, bank records, and, in the final blow, testimony from the hacker she'd hired. He had cut a deal, trading his silence for a reduced sentence in exchange for exposing Sarah's entire scheme. Linda didn't fare much better. Investigators uncovered her role in the conspiracy. She hadn't just known about Sarah's crimes, she had actively helped coordinate them. The prosecution shredded her carefully curated image of a devoted stepmother, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. Then came the moment Sarah finally cracked. On the witness stand, under the crushing weight of the truth, her composure shattered. It wasn't fair, she screamed, mascara streaking down her face. She always had everything: Dad's love, his trust, his pride, everything I wanted. I deserved that money. The judge remained unmoved. Miss Walker, your actions were deliberate, calculated, and malicious. You attempted to destroy an innocent woman's life for personal gain. This court sentences you to 8 years in prison for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Linda received 5 years as an accomplice. As they were led away in handcuffs, Sarah turned to me, hatred burning in her eyes. I hate you, she spat. I've always hated you. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I only watched them go, feeling no triumph, only the quiet sorrow of knowing what our family could have been. With the trial behind me, I moved back into my childhood home. The first few days were strange, the house feeling both familiar and foreign. My father's presence lingered in the walls, in the well-worn furniture, in the scent of old books in his study, but there were also remnants of Sarah and Linda's brief occupation, the half-finished redecorating, their attempts to erase him from this space. One evening, while sorting through the clutter they had left behind, I found an old photo album tucked inside a desk drawer. As I flipped through the pages, a folded envelope slipped free. My name was written on it in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Emma. If you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I want you to know that what happened in the hospital, my silence, my seeming betrayal, was the hardest thing I've ever done. Pretending to believe Sarah's lies, watching you walk away thinking I had abandoned you, it tore me apart. But I had to let her think she won. It was the only way to expose just how deep her deception ran. The hardest part is knowing I won't live to see justice done. I need you to know that you were always my greatest joy. You have your mother's strength and kindness, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become. The way you handled this, with patience and integrity, allowing the truth to emerge rather than seeking revenge, proves that you are exactly the person I raised you to be. Yes, the house, the business, and the money are yours now, but those things are not what truly matter. What matters is that you never compromised your values, even when everything was taken from you. I know the road ahead won't be easy. Betrayal leaves scars, and healing takes time, but I hope you find it in your heart to build a new family, one based on love and trust, not obligation or blood ties. You deserve happiness, Emma. Don't let Sarah's actions close your heart. Take care of yourself, my brave girl. Know that your mother and I are watching over you, always proud. I love you, Dad. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the letter. Even at the end, facing his own mortality, my father's greatest concern had been for my future. He had known what I truly needed, not wealth, not revenge, but the reassurance that he had believed in me, that he had always loved me. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life. The family business flourished under my leadership, but I wanted to do more. I established a scholarship fund in my father's name, helping students who had lost parents to cancer. It felt right to turn our pain into something meaningful. I also sought therapy, learning to process the trauma of Sarah's betrayal. Slowly, I learned to trust again, to open my heart to friendships, even love. My father had been right, family isn't about blood. I built a new family, one of my own choosing, filled with people who cared for me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Sarah and Linda wrote to me from prison, sending letters filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I never wrote back. Some wounds cut too deep for easy forgiveness, and some people belong in the past. Instead, I focused on honoring my father's legacy. The money Sarah had tried so desperately to steal became a force for good, funding education, community programs, and opportunities for those who needed them most. And in the end, that felt like the greatest victory, not winning, not watching Sarah's downfall, but proving that the life she had tried to take from me could still be beautiful. Now, 5 years later, I still live in the home my father built. The pain has faded, replaced by gratitude for the wisdom he left behind. Sarah and Linda's greed cost them everything, their freedom, their reputation, their future. But for me, their betrayal became a lesson. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property deeds, it's in the integrity with which we live our lives. As I sit in my father's old study, watching the sun set through his favorite window, I feel at peace. His final gift to me wasn't the money or the house. It was the lesson that patience, integrity, and truth will always prevail over greed and deception. Sometimes, I think about Sarah. I wonder if prison has changed her. But then I remember my father's words. Family isn't about blood, it's about love, trust, and choice. And I have chosen my own path, one filled with love, purpose, and people who truly matter. Sarah never understood that. But I do.